Here at Logic Before Faith, we use science, facts, and above all, logic to determine truths about things we don't know about. Today, I bring you Fran Anderson, and she is among thousands of conspiracy theorists who genuinely believe that the Earth is flat, that the Sun is not an average of 93 million miles away, and that gravity itself is a massive hoax.
Gravity talk is always contradicting itself. I'm almost 100% convinced gravity is completely bogus, and that is why the lack of gravity has to be faked. The pictures and footage from NASA and the ISS are so ridiculous once you really look at them. I hope that you take a good look at the many videos here on YouTube that point out the blatant BS of NASA, if you haven't already.
As we go through this series, I will debunk the claims made by Fran and many other flat Earth conspiracy theorists, just as many other people already have on YouTube. However, no matter how hard I try, or how much evidence that is given to the flat Earth community, they will continue to make up wild claims as to why that evidence is wrong. Since I won't be able to change a flat earther's mind, I only hope to make this series so that people who are skeptical that the Earth is round will see just how ridiculous the flat Earth community's claims are.
In the flat Earth community, there have been found many different types of devices used to fake space and gravity, or the lack thereof. There is strong evidence that they use zero-G planes for short bits of footage.
Using zero-G planes is not part of a conspiracy to fake a lack of gravity. They are there to simulate zero gravity so that scientists can study the effects of zero gravity on the human body, on liquids, and on other things. I'll make a very important point. Zero-G planes can only simulate, not fake, zero-G for 25 to 30 seconds at a time before it must change its course in order to avoid a collision with the ground. This change of course will return the passengers to a positive G environment until the plane does another dive. Why can this astronaut, who was aboard the International Space Station in 2010, give a full tour of the space station in continuous zero-G? If this was a plane, you would only see 25 to 30 seconds of zero-G, followed by 15 minutes at least of gravity. He goes on his way past 25 to 30 seconds, even goes on for minutes. This astronaut also does not have a harness on. It would get tangled in all the equipment, entangled in other astronauts' harnesses, and he would even have harnesses on his legs because he couldn't hold his legs out against the force of gravity for the entire video.
Into Columbus, you can see the station spacewalking suits, the EMUs, are stashed there on the ceiling, some more storage on the floor. Japanese experimental module, the gym, with another sleep station on the floor, other things stored here and there.
And if you haven't noticed already, the 90-degree turns into other compartments of the International Space Station. This is impossible on zero-G planes. There just isn't enough room.
Underwater in pools is another commonly used device to fake space footage.
I hate to break it to you, Fran, but underwater training, again, does not fake zero gravity. It simulates zero gravity for astronauts to train on spacewalks and use their bulky and expensive suits in a cost-effective environment before they go on real missions. These pools also provide more room than zero-G planes and can simulate a separation of the astronaut from the world they know so that they are more comfortable in life-threatening situations as they would find themselves in space. Besides, does this look like fake space to you? I think not. It looks like water in a pool. So why do space agencies use water in a pool with tools and equipment to fake space? Again, only a fool would think that this is space.
Did you know there are two gravities? That's right, two, the little g and the big G. The gravitational constant, the big G, used for astronomical calculations, is not to be confused with the small g, which is Earth's local gravitational field. Now tell me, does this seem like another contradiction when it comes to gravity? If gravity as we know it fluctuates on Earth, then shouldn't we reconsider this whole thing instead of making up a big G, which is really just an average that the science community simply agreed to make a constant?
I'll try to keep this brief. There isn't two gravities in the universe. Gravity is relative, and depending on mass, distance, and other gravitational fields, gravity can be very strong all the way to very weak. What you're saying about gravity is kind of like saying there are two different winds. No. There's just strong wind, weak wind, winds that blow north, winds that blow south, east and west, or no wind at all. Yes, I know about global surface winds, but they're labeled for their location and the direction they blow. And I'm aware that wind is a whole other issue with the flat earth community, but we'll get to that later. Under Isaac Newton's laws of gravity, there are two mathematical descriptions of gravity that is required, but Albert Einstein's theory of relativity outdates Newtonian laws, but I'll explain anyway. The larger g, the gravitational constant, under Newtonian law, can be used in the equation shown here, and is to mathematically show the relation of gravity to two bodies of mass. This equation was made famous by Isaac Newton, but it's only an estimate and isn't as accurate when using the formula for very strong gravitational fields. Again, the theory of relativity is used for that. This number is different than the large g because the mass of the Earth is specific to Earth. The small g is used for simple calculations and does not predict where planetary bodies are or will be in space. And again, the small g is even different on the Moon than from the Earth. On the Moon, it's 1.62519 meters per square second. This is because the Moon has less mass than the Earth and therefore interacts with objects of mass weaker than the Earth, given a weaker gravitational field.
In this brilliant TED Talk by Rupert Sheldrake, there is a bit about gravity being an alleged constant. I highly recommend this video. So from what I've gathered, gravity sucks. Bends, warps, pulls, and attracts. So if gravity is all about going inward, why do we see funnels all the time? Am I crazy, or does this imply downward, not inward? I feel the funnels cannot be a good representation of what's going on. I'm going to show you a video of my kids and I at the mall doing an experiment with sphere marbles and flat pennies with one of those spiral coin wishing well funnel things. I want you to think about this as you watch. The marble is rolling circularly downward, not inward. It eventually just falls down into a big open bank. If this were how planets work, where would they go? If this is a good representation, then we must be falling down into the sun towards its bottom, right? How can this be in what we define as space? Why is down any different than up?
I've seen that TED Talk with Rupert Sheldrake, and he's so far out there, they've removed the video from the TED Talks website. Sheldrake goes on to talk about the speed of light and how it's supposedly changed. Only our mathematical representation of the speed of light has changed because the scientific community has had better technology to measure the speed of light. This change is more accurate representation of the speed of light, but Sheldrake conveniently forgets that. He also should look up something called significant digits, which the scientific community uses. I can explain that, but it would take a whole other video. As for the tunnels you show, they represent the strength of the gravitational field as it relates to distance. The closer an object of mass or energy gets to an object of larger mass, the stronger the field. The funnels depict how exponentially stronger a field is when an object is that close to the center, and how it is physically impossible for the same object to remove itself from the larger object's field of gravity. Now I see in your pretty pointless experiment that the marble, which could represent a spherical Earth, just rolls right in. I don't see that happening. Which I'm assuming that you're implying that the pennies, which represents a flat Earth, depict the true way that an object of mass interact with gravitational fields of planetary bodies. Well, I see the marble interacting the same exact way as the pennies do. And the bottom just represents the inevitable collision of planetary bodies. That doesn't mean that the Earth or other planetary bodies are following toward the bottom of the sun. That's absolutely ludicrous. I suppose you have a better way of explaining it?
I'm not the first flat earther to point out that gravity can be explained using the knowledge we have on buoyancy and the way an object's molecules stack up against another object's molecules.
Oh boy. Fran, you've never taken a chemistry class, have you? Well, this ought to be easy.
I highly recommend we reconsider what weight really is, because it's currently described as being the force on an object due to gravity. I don't understand why this definition is necessary when atomic weight is considered. I think weight is a combination of atomic weight, the amount of the atoms, and the density of those atoms, that is to say, how those atoms are stacked. Doesn't it seem like when it comes to weight that more is just more, and the reason gold weighs more than helium is because there are more subatomic particles in the gold atom, and that it's really just that simple?
I think you are confusing molecules and atoms and do not understand chemistry. One object's molecules don't just stack up against another object's molecules as you describe it. A molecule is the smallest particle in a chemical element or compound that has the chemical properties of that element. They are made up of at least two atoms chemically bonded together, oftentimes more. Fran, you are also assuming that atomic weight is a number used for how much an atom weighs. That is definitely not the case. Atomic weight is the mass, meaning a number, of each chemical isotope as it relates on Earth. For example, carbon's atomic weight is 12.01 because most of the carbon on Earth is carbon-12, and there is only a very, very small amount of carbon-13 isotope and the carbon-14 isotope. You also say that the number of atoms and how dense they are should be used in calculating how much an object weighs. Well, did you know that the density of atoms does not change the weight of the object? A 5-gram ice cube will weigh the same as a 5-gram drop of water, even though the ice cube is less dense. And still, 5 grams of steam will weigh the same as the ice cube and water, even though it's still less dense than both the ice cube and the water drop. This completes part 1 of the video series Debunking Flat Earth as it relates to Fran Anderson. Please check out part 2. If you liked the videos, please comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.